This is Sports 225.
Well, one thing you can bet on tonight, oh, I'm sorry, but I had to do it, is that Zach Ewing will be on the show. And sorry, Zach, I had to do it.
I am a dad joke aficionado, so I don't mind at all.
I had been thinking about this for a while, but I wanted to get Zach to come back on. And the reason was when we first talked, he had started his job as the sports betting and gaming director for The Advocate and for NOLA.com when we were all just getting barraged with it starting. And you remember that, and it probably seems like a century ago to you in terms of what's happened since then.
Yeah, I sometimes I think about it and I'm like, how has it only been a year? Well, it's now a year and a couple of months, but it feels like I've been in this job for 10 years already. It's been a wild ride. Um, I, I, I'm doing stuff I couldn't have imagined doing, most of it in a good way. And it's just been a lot of fun.
Well, let's start with this. So Zach is in Las Vegas finishing up a convention there. Tell us about that, because I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's called the Global Gaming Expo, or G2E for short, and there were over 20,000 people here in the industry.
Wow.
It's not just sports betting, which is our part of it, but it's just for casinos and gaming. And the expo floor was, imagine the biggest room that you can at an expo center, and then quadruple it. Let's say that's how big this expo floor was. Just full. I mean, and honestly, a lot of the exhibits were just different slot machines. Like, you would not the options that these companies have for what should I fill my casino floor with, what type of slot machine, is just mind-boggling. Here's the fantasy slot machine style. Here's the game show slot machine style. Here's the new bell and whistle that this company can provide, that makes the user experience just a little bit better. All of these sorts of things. And then there's the sports betting element of it. And that's so fresh and new in the US market, that a lot of the education part of this convention had to do with where's sports betting going next. Not just geographically, as in which states will legalize it next, but how do we transition from people just signing up and taking advantage of these bonuses to people actually enjoying the entertainment of sports betting long term and becoming loyal customers.
Well, like so many of us who get into sports writing, and in your case, a sports writer first. So like a friend of mine was asking me the other day, who do I root for? And I said, nobody. I hate everybody because of just being in it. I wonder if after this intense period, and like you like sports gambling before this, but since it's become your 24/7 job, has that changed your attitude about any of it?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, you get jaded a little bit, but also you think of things more from an industry perspective. Like, I'm not from Louisiana, and I don't have anything against the Saints or LSU, but I've never been a fan of them particularly. Now my boys have turned into Saints fans since we've moved here, and so I like it when the Saints win because it makes them happy. But I'm always thinking of it more like, well, if the Saints are winning, that's good for business because more people are going to be tuning into our shows and betting and things like that. And so, and yeah, from a betting perspective, you start to think about, well, what's the most interesting story? Just like we do as sports writers, right? Like, I like these. You see it on SVP Sports Center, the bad beats. Like, you like these stories where it comes down to the last minute, and all of us gamblers are paying attention to a game that's 40-13, and nobody else is because we've got money on the over and we need one more touchdown. You definitely just start to think about it differently.
So to get back to where you were talking about the convention and the direction of sports betting, is there anything coming on the horizon that you gleaned out of this week that we go, whoa, that's big? Or maybe
I
not.
don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that there's one thing. You just learn interesting things. Like, Ohio is launching sports betting on January 1st. Okay. And they are allowing people to bet on esports, on video games, which is not something that you can do in Louisiana or a lot of other markets that are already legal. And part of that is because there's just some regulatory concerns. A lot of esports players are under the age of 18. And so that becomes a legal concern. And then it's also a match fixing problem. Video games are something that's very, very, very easy to fix, as you might imagine. And so there's some concern with that. But Ohio is going to forge ahead and see how that happens. So that's one thing that's interesting. And then there's just more nuts and bolts things about, did you know that 47% of NFL fans are women, but only 27% of NFL bettors are women? So how do we close that gap? How do we get more women involved? Is the barstool model keeping them away? All of these interesting questions. So I don't know that there's any one thing. I guess that the headline from the conference would be that even industry leaders who are optimistic about this earlier in the year do not believe that California will have mobile sports betting. It's on the ballot in November. They don't believe it's going to pass. And so they're already looking towards 2024 because that's obviously the next big frontier for them.
There's about a million things I thought I would hear today, and not one of them was we might bet on esports. He is
it's
Zach,
coming. Yeah.
It's awesome. He's Zach Ewing. He's the sports betting and gaming director for NOLA.com, which includes the Advocate and the Times-Picayune. He lives in Baton Rouge, talking to us from Las Vegas. I'm in your hometown of Baton Rouge, and we'll take this break on Sports 225.
Who says you need a vacation for a view like this? Or, I wish there was a place to get in shape. Try getting on the beaten path. Discover an ever-expanding network of trails and greenways. Some quintessential southern beauty. Or romp through the woods in a magical land between the rivers. There's more to explore than you ever imagined. Beyond the swing sets. Breck, we are more than a playground.
All right, we're back on Sports 225, catching up with Zach Ewing. He's the sports betting and gaming director for NOLA.com, which includes the Times-Picayune and the Baton Rouge Advocate. Zach, for your history lesson, and you may or may not have known this, when I started at the Advocate in December of 1984, it was the Baton Rouge Morning Advocate. And of course, there was the afternoon paper called the State Times. And one day, when the State Times ended, they said they wanted to change it to the Baton Rouge Advocate and just call it the Advocate, which at the time was the same name as the largest gay newspaper in the country. And that gave everybody cause for concern, but it worked out okay. And for all the things that you thought you might hear today, like betting on sports, on esports, there you go.
Yeah, that wasn't in the Morning Advocate, was it? The esports coverage.
Not back then. In fact, the closest thing we had probably to it was on Fridays or Saturdays. They made us choose who we thought was going to win. They give us a big list of football games for the weekend. And so you'd have all the sports writers and the desk guys, and we'd all have to pick who we thought was going to win. National games, of course, LSU and key SEC games, Southern and a couple of games. And I was absolutely the worst at it then, and probably still would be now.
I do find it interesting, though, that I'm surprised that ever went away, because when I started at the Advocate in 2017, they weren't doing, the beat writers would pick winners, would pick a score for the LSU game or the Saints game or Southern or Tulane or whatever. But it wasn't widespread. And one of the things that I did when I became the sports betting editor is bring that back and say, well, not only are we going to make picks, we're going to make picks against the spread. Because to me, the essence of sports betting, it's not a bunch of degenerates sitting in a smoke-filled room. Now, it can be that, but I think that's
I resemble that remark.
Yeah. I think that's a little unfair, because I think it really gets at the heart of what sports fandom is. And that's when you're standing at the water cooler on a Thursday morning saying, well, how do you think the Tigers will do this weekend? And the answer inevitably is, I think they'll win, or I think they'll lose. I think they'll get blown out, or I think it'll be a close game. And that's what sports betting is, right? You're just putting your money where your mouth is and saying, okay, well, the line's 4.5. Let's really get down to brass tacks and say, you think it'll be a close game. Is that closer than 4 points, or is it more than 4 points? And who's going to win? And we have these conversations. You have these conversations with your friends and family and colleagues ever since sports were a thing, ever since you were a little kid in the third grade. And so now we just talk about them with some numbers attached, and you put $5 or $10 down, and you have a good time with it. That, to me, that's what sports betting is.
Yeah, and when you do that, it gives you a vested interest. And like you said, when it's 40-13, you pay attention.
Right. And it just makes what's already something that entertains you a little bit more entertaining. And if you end up losing your $10 bet because of that, Well, it's still cheaper than going to the movies.
That's true. Hey, all right. So this is a curiosity question, not that I'm going in any particular direction or circle back to. So because of where we live in Louisiana, do most of the bets that funnel through you guys focus on LSU and the Saints and or perhaps the Pelicans?
I mean, we don't get that data. Caesars Sportsbook is our partner. We don't get the data of who's necessarily betting on what, at least not very often. But I can tell you our content, even in the sports betting realm, is more well read if it has to do with a local team. If we write about the odds for LSU versus Florida this weekend or the Saints versus the Bengals, of course that's going to be more interest to people. I think today on bet.nola.com we have a post about Zion Williamson's MVP odds. Tomorrow I'm going to put something up about Joe Burrow's prop bets against the Saints this weekend. I mean, that's the sort of stuff our readers are going to read about anyway. And again, like I said, if we could frame it as a sports betting story, but really it's just a story for people who want to know what's going to happen. And that's the stuff that resonates. A couple of days ago, we had a story about Sean Payton is the betting favorite to be the next Carolina Panthers head coach. Well, isn't that interesting? Now you can't actually bet on that one because it's only available in offshore markets, which are illegal. But it's still something that gets at the heart of what sports fans in Louisiana want to read about.
That's very interesting. I didn't realize that type of betting was illegal, but obviously people can do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's out there. It's possible. You can do it just like you can do other illegal things. I discourage it simply because you can download an app that's offshore and place a bet. And that specific act is not actually illegal. But what is illegal because of the Wire Act is depositing or withdrawing money from these places. And of course, to play, you have to deposit money. And the problem with it is it's not regulated. So you don't know, they can charge you whatever they want to charge you to get your money back out, or they don't have to do it at all. I mean, that industry, that website could fold tomorrow and your money would fold with it. And a regulated legal sports book like Caesars Sportsbook or like a FanDuel or a DraftKings or something, you're protected to where if something were to happen to that company, your money would still come back to you because they're all regulated by the government. So that's why I discourage it. But you're right. I mean, look, people do it every day, and they can do it.
You bring out some fascinating things. Zach Ewing is an interesting man with an interesting job. So that's
definitely true
too, though, that you don't get that data on like what trends and what they're betting on, not necessarily who's making the bets.
Yeah, we do get it from time to time, but it's not something that we can record ourselves. So it obviously anyone will tell you football is king. The NFL specifically is king when it comes to this, just like when it comes to TV viewership or anything else. Look, football is very conducive to it. We get the odds on Sunday and Monday for the next week, and we can, here's the opening odds. Here's how the line is moving throughout the week. Here's how the over-under is moving. Here's some player props. And just like in a traditional sports media sense, we're talking about this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, leading up to that weekend's game. We can talk about it in a sports betting sense. Whereas baseball or basketball, the games are more frequent. The lines don't come out until the night before or the morning of. There's just less time to talk about it. There's less time to bet on it. There's less time to analyze it. And so it's just not quite as conducive as football is. But football's king anyway. We know that.
No doubt. He is Zach Ewing, the sports betting and gaming director for NOLA.com. I'm Lee Feinswag. We come back. We'll talk about some of the things that Zach does on a daily basis. He's ubiquitous. I don't even know what that means. We'll be right back.
Who says you need a vacation for a view like this? Or, I wish there was a place to get in shape. Try getting on the beaten path. Discover an ever-expanding network of trails and greenways. Some quintessential southern beauty. Or romp through the woods in a magical land between the rivers. There's more to explore than you ever imagined. Beyond the swing sets, Breck, We are more than a playground.
Back on Sports 225, hanging out figuratively with Zach Ewing, the sports betting and gaming director for NOLA.com, which is the Advocate and the Times-Picayune. He lives in Baton Rouge, but he's kind enough to be doing this show from Las Vegas, where he's finishing up a convention appropriately about the issue at hand. Now, you're like I said about you being ubiquitous, which kind of means, I really do know what it means. You're everywhere, but the amount of media things that you do each week is unbelievable. So if you tell people some of the stuff and where they can see it and link up to it, that'd be great.
Yeah. So our brand is, we have a couple of places. Bet.nola.com is the homepage. A lot of people just say Bet NOLA, but you got to put the dot in there, bet.nola.com. And our other brand is Bayou Bets. And so we encourage people to go to our YouTube channel, Bayou Bets YouTube channel. I talk with James Carville every week, the resident Louisiana degenerate who, you know him for his political analysis, but also just loves to bet on football. And he talks to us about his picks every week. That comes out on the YouTube channel every Thursday morning. And then Monday and Thursday at 4:00, we have a live show called Bayou Bets, where we talk Saints, we talk LSU, the NFL, we make some picks, we have fun. People come and hang out and leave their comments, and we talk trash back and forth. And so it's just a lot of fun. And it's all centered around sports betting, but if you're not necessarily a big bettor, I think you still like it as a sports fan. So that's every Monday and Thursday at 4:00. And then if you don't catch it live, it's up, in perpetuity. You can catch it on demand.
It's so interesting, the twists that you've taken from being a sports writer or a sports editor, in the context of the newsroom, to be doing something like this, where even like what we're doing is pretty much what you do all the time.
Yeah, I tell you, I mean, I do some things that I just can't ever have imagined myself doing. You got to pinch yourself sometimes. 2 weekends ago, I was in London covering the Saints, but I wasn't covering them from a beat. We had beat writers and columnists there too, right? I'm there doing social media and taking some videos and trying to engage with people and again build our community. And so I had a video right in front of me of the double doink where the ball hits the goalpost and then hits the crossbar. And like, again, not born and raised a Saints fan, but my God, how did that not go in? And taking video of it and then interacting with people over it and commiserating with them. It's been a whirlwind and a ton of fun.
Well, you went, 6-7 hours to the east, and then you come home and go an hour, 2 hour. Las Vegas right now is Pacific time, I believe, right?
Yeah, 2 hours. Yeah.
So, it just, that kind of travel wears on you. But the London experience, how long were you there, and what did you enjoy about it?
Okay, so I have to preface it by saying I'm kind of an old hat at London because my in-laws are there. My wife's family lives there, and we actually got married in London, and so that's why they let me go, because I had a place to stay. So it was just the cost of the plane ticket. I say just, but not nearly as expensive as sending a normal employee and having to pay for lodging and food and all of that. So I love London. It's one of my favorite places on earth. I was really impressed with the production the NFL put on over there. There are, I think everybody, when the NFL started playing games at Wembley Stadium, I think about 10 years ago, everybody kind of rolled their eyes and said, well, why are you doing that? You'll get a few expats to show up at the game, and that's fine, but this will never grow. You wouldn't believe, I'm taking the train back from Tottenham Hotspur Football Stadium, which is in the north part of London. My in-laws live in the southwest part of London, have to take the train back. There were so many, this is hours after the game now. So they've gone to the game, they've gone to a pub, they've had a couple of drinks and dinner, and now they're riding the train back into London. So many Brits, you just tell by their accent, they are British people who are talking NFL and their fantasy teams and who they like next week and their survivor pools. I mean, it was like being in the US and listening to a bar in downtown New Orleans after a Saints game, except I was on the train in North London.
That's kind of fascinating. That Thursday before that game, I had a fly out of New Orleans, and both the short-term and long-term parking garages were completely full. You had to drive around to the economy parking where they shuttle you by bus, which, as it turned out, wasn't that bad, but I was kind of annoyed about it. But that's a direct indication of how many people flew from New Orleans to that game. There was, a huge Louisiana contingent that went to that sporting event.
Oh, my flight, I flew out of Baton Rouge, flew through Dallas, and my flight from Dallas to London, what those 777s hold about 200 and something people. 75% of them were Saints fans. I mean, it's unbelievable.
That is that's economic impact, interest, all the things you're talking about. And you said you were in Tottenham. Did you go to the game? Did you see a Hotspur game?
I actually saw one. I am a Tottenham fan. I saw one back in March. I was in London in March, my visiting family, and got to see it. Usually we go in the summertime, but because we were there during the Premier League season, had a chance to go see a game for the first time. It was fantastic. This past weekend, they were actually at Arsenal 2 weekends ago now, which is their biggest rival. Tried to get tickets. You were looking at £700 a head, and I said, okay, I'll pass on that and watched it in a pub instead.
Well, I've been lucky enough in Europe to have been to Allianz Arena and seen München 1860. I've been to Benfica in Lisbon, and I've been to Barcelona, which is truly one of the most amazing experiences. I've never gotten to do Premier League. Got to get out in a hurry, so we have time for this last short segment. He's Zach Ewing. I'm Lee Feinswag at Sports 225.
Who says you need a vacation for a view like this? Or, I wish there was a place to get in shape. Try getting on the beaten path. Discover an ever-expanding network of trails and greenways. Some quintessential southern beauty. Or romp through the woods in a magical land between the rivers. There's more to explore than you ever imagined. Beyond the swing sets. Breck, we are more than a playground.
Coming down the home stretch of another Sports 225, go to sports225.com for all the show listings for where you're watching it here on Your View, which is Cox 4. Zach Ewing is the sports betting and gaming director for NOLA.com. Kind enough to join me from Las Vegas, although he lives in Baton Rouge. But so 1 year ago, we were just barraged for seemingly forever with commercial after commercial after commercial because sports betting had become legal in Louisiana. Where is it at 1 year later? Is it as big as you anticipated or even bigger?
It's grown a lot. It's a little bit difficult to say. We saw such a deluge of people signing up when sports betting first went live in late January in Louisiana. And it has certainly slowed since then, but it's still steady enough to where you can see this thing growing for several years to come until this market is more mature. As far as the commercials go, I don't know that they're going anywhere. I will tell you that the sports betting companies, just from being at this conference, they're cognizant of that and they don't want to oversaturate. You may laugh at that because it seems like they did, but they are cognizant of what that looked like at first, and they want to scale that back.
You gave advice to first-time bettors when I had you on last year. Any advice to first-timers or the people who are continuing?
I think it's what I said earlier. Look, it's entertainment. If you are not a sharp sports bettor who does this for a living and is willing to come up with algorithms to dissect NFL games or NBA games or soccer games or whatever it is you bet on, you are probably not going to win big money. That's just the long and the short of it. And so you have to look at it as it's entertainment, and you can win money, but you also just have fun doing it.
He is Zach Ewing, the sports betting and gaming director for NOLA.com. It's bet.NOLA.com. Zach, this was awesome. I'm fascinated by what you do for a living and appreciate you coming on.
No problem, Lee. Anytime.
All right. Thank you for watching Sports 225. And if you're so inclined, go bet on it.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story.